I'm the chair of the board of directors, and I would like to thank you all for attending this evening. If you would like to feel more comfortable in social distance, please feel free to do so. And we just thank you for practicing the guidelines for the current COVID-19 conditions. We'd like to thank you for joining us and tonight to hear from the folks who've made a huge commitment to our city, to the future, to Billings by running for public office. Thank you. With that said, I would like to offer my heartfelt thanks to the candidates on stage working for us, for our votes, and for the privilege of representing our great city with a seat on the City Council. Please help me thank them for tonight. I'd also like to thank the beautiful Alberta Bair. Look around you. I know that you all enjoyed the amenities as you walked in and the beautiful facility that we call home. And Alberta Bair has done a great job in welcoming us, and we're proud to be here tonight. There are partners for tonight's program with the Downtown Billings Alliance and the Billings Chamber's Business Advocacy sponsored, listed on the screen behind me. Local elections are important. If this is the first you're seeing the candidates, we're incredibly grateful that you're here, ready to listen and learn, and perhaps be inspired to run for office yourself. For those of you who attended one or more of the forums the Chamber hosted earlier in the year, we're so happy that you have come back for more tonight, because these elections are so important for businesses, for our families, for our taxpayers, our most important job. In fact, I would argue that local elections are far more important than the national elections. But don't just take my word for it. Please direct your attention to the screen as two amazing Chamber board members discuss the priority of the Chambers.
Together, and if we don't keep addressing the needs of public safety, of quality of life, and all the above, the Chamber priorities, we're not going to have this amazing community. So this is so critical for those of you that are considering running. I hope you would, because that's the difference in making this community incredible.
Largely, we're getting all of our information from our members. We survey constantly, we're listening to what our members want, so we're not operating in a vacuum. This isn't just the Chamber as an organization that's endorsing or throwing support behind. This is truly what the business community is telling us that they want. It's important to them by and large, and I think that's important that we listen to our membership.
We're gonna have tough conversations in the year ahead, but let's not get to our corners and duke it out, but let's come together in the forums that the policy and people matter provide, bring those together, have those conversations, and let's make it happen. These votes and these policies are needing to be worked
on. Awesome. Thank you, Jess and Jeremy. I would like to take the opportunity to do a quick poll here. I know there's a lot of stake for our candidates tonight, but if you're from Ward 1, would you raise your hand? Thank you. Ward 2? Ward 3? Ward 4? Ward 5. Wonderful, thank you. So here we are, as Jess said, bringing folks together to have conversations. And whether we wear a cowboy hat or not, we know the importance of conversations. Once again, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you to the Alberta Bair Theatre for hosting. And thank you to our partner for hosting tonight's event, the Downtown Billings Alliance. And now I have the pleasure of introducing Katie Easton, Executive Director of DBA, for a few remarks before we get started with the great program. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Downtown Billings, and welcome to the gorgeous Alberta Bair Theatre. Thank you so much for being here tonight. As Nicole said, my name is Katie Easton. I'm the CEO of the Downtown Billings Alliance. We're all things downtown. If something's happening down here, there's a chance that we have our fingers in it somewhere. But even though we focus on downtown Billings and all of the really exciting things that are happening down here every single day and the vision that we see for downtown Billings, we believe wholeheartedly that when downtown Billings prospers, our entire community prospers. And so the decisions that we make for this small little neighborhood and this small community here that we see as downtown, we make those decisions in greater part for the good of downtown Billings. And in a similar manner, these council candidates, while they will be elected to represent a small area of the city of Billings, they will make decisions for our community as a whole, big decisions that will guide this city for decades to come. A really great example of a decision that council has made in the recent past is this beautiful building that we're sitting in. This facility and the project that took upon a multi-million-dollar renovation to really put this venue on the map to be something that's amazing as an asset and a gem to our community was partially funded by a tax increment financing grant. These grants are approved or disapproved by our city council. So this elected body will make decisions like projects like this. They will make decisions that will go forward really for our community for decades. This elected body also, most importantly, one of the things that's on our mind, will guide our community as we move forward together to find solutions to address public safety in our city. Very, very important things. They'll work on policy that's going to form things like pets on leashes, marijuana sales, city parks, and hopefully, my true hope in my heart is that this city council and whoever we choose to elect this coming fall is going to find vision for our city, vision for our community and what it can be to make the city of Billings the absolute best that it can be. We know that it can. These council candidates also know that it can. And so thank you so much for your time being here, hearing what they have to say, asking some hard questions. And I hope that this isn't the only opportunity that you take to get to know these candidates. I hope that you'll reach out to them, whether they represent your ward or they represent the city as a whole, and really find out what it is that they stand for. What is their vision for our community? Because they will make decisions that will guide this community for decades. So I want to offer my sincere thank you to the Alberta Bair Theatre for hosting us tonight, the Billings Chamber for partnering, my DBA team for helping to put this event on, and a huge, huge round of applause to our candidates for their dedication. Just the effort that it takes to be here is huge, and we appreciate it so, so much. I'm going to turn it over to John Brewer, but please, a huge round of applause for this event. Thanks, you guys, so much. John Brewer.
Hi there. Good evening, everybody. Katie, thank you for your support on this program tonight. I am John Brewer, President and CEO of the Billings Chamber of Commerce, and I also will be serving as your moderator this evening. I want to make sure we take a moment to welcome all of you who are joining us in person at the Alberta Bair Theatre. There are around 100 people here, in addition to the people watching us live tonight on Community 7. Also want to welcome our candidates and thank you again for taking the time tonight. A special thank you also to Dan Brooks, the Business Advocacy Director for the Billings Chamber of Commerce, for developing tonight's event, along with the assistance of Jack Genoway. Before we get started, I need to cover 3 quick items. First, I need to introduce your candidates. Second, I'll explain the format. And lastly, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. So first of all, please allow me to introduce the candidates, and I'd ask that you hold your applause until we get through the entire list here. Seeking a seat in Ward 1 is Ed Gulick. Ward 2 candidate, Jennifer Owen. Ward 3, Councilwoman Denise Joy and Charlie Loveridge. Ward 4, Mary Hernandez and Tim Warburton. Ward 5, Tom Ripsis and Dennis Elvistad. One more time for the candidates, please. All right, absent from tonight's panel, you'll see, is Mayor Bill Cole. The mayor had no opponent in this election, so Mayor Cole was appointed by acclamation of the City Council. This means that he will continue to serve as our mayor for the next 4 years and will not be on your ballot. Mayor Cole graciously wanted to give more time tonight for people to hear from the other candidates. We also have 2 candidates, Stephanie Kruger and Dan Tidswell, who planned to attend but were feeling under the weather. Because they did not want to put all of you at risk, they've decided to stay home tonight, and we do wish them both a speedy recovery from their illness. Next, let me explain tonight's format. We will begin by asking a total of 8 questions where candidates can explain their answers. They will have 2 minutes for their introductory statement, and for the remaining 7 questions, they will just have 1 minute. So answers will be succinct, fast, and on the cuff. Candidates know the first and last question. They do not know the other 6 questions that will be asked. Answers will be given in an alternating order from left to right, and then from right to left, and we will alternate the starting point for each question. Therefore, every candidate will have the opportunity to be the first responder. We ask candidates to please stay seated while giving their answers. And in addition to the 8 questions where we will be asking for verbal responses, there will also be 2 lightning rounds, and we're going to use, I hate to say this, our super spooky owls, if you want to hold those up. So for our lightning rounds, candidates have the super spooky owls. It's in my notes, I had to read it. One side is red and has an N, so that will be the no answer. The other side green with a Y for yes. All right. 2 last housekeeping items. We've, as Nicole mentioned, we've allowed for a lot of physical distancing tonight. We do ask that you maintain that and respect that. Second, if you head out of the atrium to use the restroom or to get a refill, please do so quietly to ensure audience members can hear our candidates. Okay, so enough from us. We're going to turn things over to our candidates. So question number 1. It's going to be the introductory statement. Each candidate has 2 minutes to make an opening statement to tell voters who you are, to speak about your ward, why you are running, your background, or anything else that you think is pertinent. And we're going to start with Mr. Gulick and move to the audience's right, Ed's left.
Thank you. Well, good evening. Thank you all for coming, and thanks to the Chamber for putting this event together. I'm Ed Gulick. I live near Pioneer Park, and I'm an architect. I'm a small business owner at High Plains Architects, which is kind of the edge of downtown on the south side. And I'm really excited to be running for Ward 1, the seat there. I have a great passion and genuine love for Billings, and I want my community to be a loving, fun, vibrant, prosperous place to live, a place that our friends, our children, our grandchildren just can't wait to come back to. I grew up here in Billings, graduating from Billings Senior in 1990, and then I went to college in California and went to graduate school in architecture in Connecticut and worked for a few years in a firm in San Francisco Bay Area. But I was always plotting my return back to Billings, and I had that opportunity in 2004. I love Billings because of our amazing rim rocks and the river, and I love our people. We're friendly and authentic, not pretentious or conceited, looking down on others. And I think that we're hardworking people, and if given good leadership, we're also a very can-do people. I think we have incredible potential. And talking to people in the doors, I know that the great citizens, businesses, and institutions of Billings are longing to reach out and grab that potential. But we need leadership that understands the strategic challenges and opportunities that our community faces. I have a vision of Billings as a high-performance city. That's excellence in terms of economic, health, community, equity, and environmental performance. It's about creating a city that's every bit as amazing as our natural environs, working within the means that we have. A vibrant city of engaging places. I have lots of ideas of how we can get there, and with the right leadership, I believe we will. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jennifer Owen. I am running for Ward 2 to represent the Heights. I am born and raised here in Billings, and I am so excited for this moment for our city and our future. I think we are at a pivotal moment, not just in my home of the Heights, but for the city as a whole. For the last 2 years, I've served as chair of the Heights Neighborhood Task Force. And in those 2 years, we've advanced some really critical projects for our neighborhood. We have worked and made progress on the Inner Belt Loop, the Billings Bypass, the development of Castle Rock Park, the kinds of stimulative activities that will bring economic growth and prosperity to our neighborhood for decades to come. And those are the exact same kinds of moments that we can be having all around our city with the right vision and the right leadership. After working hard for my Heights community, I'm ready to bring that energy now to City Council. I am, in addition to my work on the Heights Task Force, I'm first and foremost a mom of one amazing young boy, and I also work as a guardian ad litem for abused and neglected children here in Yellowstone County. So when I come to the public safety conversation, I come to it from the perspective of some of the most vulnerable people in our community. It's something that I've done for a long time, working on behalf of those families, and I think this is the time when we have to have problem solvers at the table who can tackle some of the most complicated issues ahead of us. This is our moment to create a vision for our city, for the kinds of prosperity and accountability and growth that we expect out of a city that should be the regional hub and needs to continue that leadership in the area. I have a long record of commitment and dedication to this community, and I think this is our moment to really step into our future. I appreciate everyone being here tonight. As you heard the host say earlier, this is really a critical election with the issues that touch us most. So very much looking forward to the questions tonight, and thank you to the hosts and everyone for having us here.
Thank you. I'm Denise Joy. I represent Ward 3 on the City Council, and I appreciate the Chamber organizing this event and allowing us the opportunity to speak and share our visions and share our concerns. I was raised in Hardin, Montana. I was born here in Billings. I spent a lot of time on the south side with my grandparents. My grandparents lived in what is now called the Triangle. My father graduated from senior high and joined the Marines and trained in military police and joined the Hardin Police Department in 1961. My mother worked in the school cafeteria while I was growing up. I got a BA in political science from Cleveland State University and studied for 2 years at Mississippi State University in public administration and public policy. I decided to run after attending a council meeting in 2017. In 2017, I was expecting just to write a blog or something of that nature. But after I had watched the discussion on art space, I decided that I needed to run. I bring my diplomacy, respect for everyone, and commitment to hard work with my leadership. Ward 3 is in need of continued investment in public safety. We have areas of high violent crime and high substance abuse. These problems result in violent crime and high numbers of calls for public safety. These impact our children's lives. I see this in my school. I work at Burlington School in a special needs classroom. Children are experiencing violence and witnessing violent crime. Ward 3 needs continued reinvestment. We need family-oriented businesses that add value and services to our neighborhood. We don't need more public service calls with bad neighbors that impact the safety of our residential properties, with shootings, robberies, and hostage taking. My work to increase the casino separations from neighborhoods made a difference in important regulations that constituents want done. My vision for BPD is to have a relationship-based community policing where they know us and we know them, we trust them, They trust us to give them the help that they need in order to bring a more safe Billings. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Charlie Loveridge. I'm running for Ward 3 for various and sundry reasons. I sat there and I was watching, I've been here my whole life, born and raised. I'm sitting there watching the meetings, and I'm looking at the newspapers, and I'm reading the reports, and I'm thinking, I've been here for 53 years, third generation Loveridge. The drugs are out of control. We have shootouts in the streets that rival a good scene in the movie Lethal Weapon. We have transiency that we've never seen before. These are the things that concern me. These are the reasons why I decided I wanted to run. I have 4 kids. I'm worried about them, and a grandson, by the way. Yay, brand new. I'm worried about them. I'm worried about having a community where 1, we're not safe. 2, we're not doing the necessary things we need to do to support the safety of our community. The drugs are rampant. They're telling us that there's 4 overdoses a day. Right now, 4 overdoses a day in Yellowstone County. I know, shaking my head too. I couldn't believe that number. And if you go downtown, we talk about having a vibrant community downtown. How can we have a vibrant community when people are scared to go down there? These are things that need to be handled, and it needs to be handled with private sector common sense, and that's what I bring to the table. I'm a businessman. I've owned my own business now for 32 years. I have 43 employees, all of them great people, and I'm so proud every day when I know they go home and be able to put food on their table. They are a great part of our lives, and I'm so proud every day of what we've accomplished. But I want to take that, and I want to take it to the community. I want to take what I've learned and bring it to them and say, okay, let's figure this out. We have serious problems. We need serious people. And I believe that time is mine now to come and serve our community in Ward 3. So thank you very much for having me, the Chamber, and I look forward to future questions.
Good evening. Before I start, I cannot see the clock. Great, thanks. Okay, great, thank you. My name is Mary Hernandez, and I am running in Ward 4. Basically, that's from North 27th minus the Hospital University to Ironwood, from Colton north to the Rims. A few houses up top, Sky Ranch and the like, and then Reberg Ranch. So it is a huge, a lot of walking. I have been, I'm a 41-year resident of Billings. I came here from Louisiana. I was born in the hill country of Texas, and I fell in love with Billings. We fell in love with Billings, my husband and I and daughter. And what was a summer house sitting assignment became, is now 41 years old. So anyway, I'm married to Patrick Smith, who spends much of his time on the Billings trails and in the mountains of the Beartooth and Pryor Mountains when he's not working in the Arctic. And this is really home base and important to him. Our daughter, Catherine, graduated from senior high before receiving her bachelor's from Carleton College. Currently, she's living in Oakland, California. In my first decade in living in Billings, and when I was really exploring, when we were really exploring everything around here, we love the parks, we love so many of the amenities, and then I also worked for Dave Movius, who was a periodontist at first year, and the reason I mention his name is because I immediately found mentors in this community to help me understand what was going on here, and then also how to become involved. And I have been involved with the community since then, have worked with amazing people throughout the years. I feel it's, after working with Dave, or as I was working with Dave, I also was working on getting a bachelor's in organizational communication from Easton, now Montana State University. After I received that degree, I pivoted and worked. Oh, I'm done?
Sorry.
Wow, okay. I've been around. And I do a lot with planning and strategic planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Hello, I'm Tim Warburton, candidate here in Ward 4. Wanted to thank the Chamber and Alberta Bair for hosting us, and more importantly, you guys for coming out, being engaged and wanting to learn more about what's going on. So I moved here in '05. I followed my now wife, girlfriend here from Bozeman. She was in nursing school for a semester, and she was returning home, and she couldn't get rid of me, and the rest is history. So I'm a spouse, a dad. I have 4 kids, and since my father-in-law is also in the room, I'll mention that I'm an in-law as well. I really started serving the community almost right away. I started when I coached my daughter's soccer team of 4-year-olds, which I don't know if you've ever been to a soccer game of 4-year-olds. It's really fun. They all kind of run around in a mass group. The first practice, this is kind of the first thing I did here, was I kicked this kid in the face with the ball by accident because the ball went a little bit too far. And the parents decided I could stay, and so I've been serving since then. After that, one of my other things I did was I served on the naming committee at Ben Steel, which was an interesting experience, introduced me to a lot of different people here. Then I also served on the Parks Board most recently for 4 years, alongside the guy here to my left, and really just kind of fell in love with the way the city operates and really got into it. And I know from experience and education that, like was said at the top, this is really important. And so to see you guys here for local elections is important. I'm a social worker. I believe in the social worker values, essentially treating people with dignity, being fair, those kind of things. I'm a licensed addictions counselor. I work downtown in our healthcare for the homeless program. I worked in our treatment court program with Judge Nisley. And so when we talk about challenges facing the city, I have a unique perspective, I think, in my roles and my experience in education to working with our substance abuse issues, our mental health problems, and our homeless problem that we have here in town. So I'm ready to get to work and excited to answer more, and my time's up, so I'll move on. Thank you, guys.
Good evening. My name is Tom Ripsis, and I'm running in Ward 5. My first job was on a farm in rural Maryland where I grew up. I was 14 years old, and I cleaned horse stalls, and I mowed grass, and I painted fences, and did all the great things that a 14-year-old can do. My parents instilled in me at an early age the values of hard work, honesty, integrity, independence. 25 years ago, I met a young lady from Billings, Montana, who shared those same values. Kim and I have been married for 21 years now. We've got 2 wonderful sons at West High, a senior and a sophomore. And we've been involved in everything that we could possibly be. We've been involved and supported in Little League and YSA and TrailNet and the PTAs and the school band and music programs and Landon's Legacy and on and on. I'm a member of the Billings West Rotary Club. I'll be president of that club next year. I'm an active member of the West End Task Force. I've been on the Parks Board now for 8 years, as Tim mentioned. This is my 3rd year as the chair of that board. Professionally, I'm self-employed. I am a technical project manager and business analyst. I do software development. I think Billings is a transitional state right now. You drive around town and you see the development, and you can just feel the energy in our town. We need people on council that can understand the complex issues that come with that growth, that can think strategically about where we're going to go as a community, that can help address our challenges, find solutions, and also take advantage of opportunities as they arise. And most importantly, we need to protect what's great and unique about Billings. We also need people that work well with others. I've heard from council members that partisanship is making things harder to get things done. We need to put aside our partisan differences and work together for Billings. That's why I've made independence and nonpartisanship a core values of my campaign. That's who I am, and that's how I'll approach the position of council member.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Dennis Elvistad. I'm currently 71 years old, and I've lived in Billings all my life. And I'm running for Billings City Ward, Council Ward 5. I'm retired. As I said, I lived all my life. I was part of Burn the Point down here when we were going around one way till it was changed a few years back. Also, I'm a Vietnam veteran. Also, when I got out of high school, I says, gosh, I hope I don't get selected. My number was number 2. I couldn't believe it. I says, I know where I'm going. In my experience, I've served as the chairman of the West End Task Force for 4 years. Also, as you remember, I've served as the co-chair of the Animal Control Board. If you remember, I was part of that board when we were wondering if we should have chickens in our city. Also, I've served on the zoning commission for 5 years. Very, very active board that is. And I think it's very important to your constituents, if elected, to have them be involved. Let's say they disagree with me, I voted yes on something and they voted no. I think it's very, very important to be engaged with your constituents. Go out there and tell them why you voted that way. We asked for no. That way that can get them involved and be part of the solution and not the problem. I believe that downtown Billings is a wonderful, wonderful downtown. I have been to several other downtowns and they seem like they go away, but downtown Billings and Mr. Brewer and Mr. Avskow and other people, you know, what do you want to come to Billings for? We have a great downtown, and that's why I'm running for city council. I believe that I'm experienced and I've had over 12 years experience. Thank you.
All right, it's time for our first lightning round using your super spooky owls. I'm going to read you the question and ask all of you to respond simultaneously so the audience will be able to see your yes or no answer. The first question, we'll throw up a couple softballs here. Have you read the city charter? Okay. Question number 2, have you attended a city council meeting in the last 6 months? Thank you. Last question in this lightning round. So fall is here, Halloween is right around the corner, and I want you to let voters know if you agree with me on this statement, that without a doubt, the absolute worst sweet treat in the history of humanity is candy corn. Okay. I think we'll allow you all to stay on the stage, but questionable responses there. We're going to move on to our 1-minute responses. Collectively, you guys got about a 70% with the 2-minute warning, so we're going to go 1 minute, and I'm going to do my best to let you know when you hit that 1 minute. And Ms. Hernandez, I apologize that you cannot see that counter, so I will give you a little wave a couple minutes beforehand. In order to get through this in a timely manner, I do ask that we all hold our applause as well, just to expedite the question and answer period. So, question number 2. Let's start these questions off on a lighter note. I've generously gifted you, our recently elected city council members, $10 million, a one-time donation. You have unilateral authority to spend it on any of the 108 projects identified in the city's capital improvement plan. What project or projects do you spend it on and why? Again, just 1 minute. Let's be very succinct in our answers, please. And we're going to start with Mr. Elvistad, and then we'll move to the audience's left, the candidate's right. So, Mr. Elvistad, please.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. You're all gifted $10 million. What would you use that $10 million on if you had unilateral authority to spend it on any of the 108 projects identified in the city capital improvement plan?
Capital improvement plan. I think it's very important that the capital improvement plan be very well studied, because this is what's going to happen to your money, which I'm saying all the constituents and wards here. Cabinet Improvement Plan gives us a schematic of what we want for the city. And that's just like what happened to the dog parks out here. We had to make a schematic plan, capital improvement plan for the years. And what we did accomplish that. And I feel capital improvement plans are very, very important to the city.
Thank you.
Well, John, I'm going to take a little bit of issue with the question. If we're gifted $10 million, I don't want to spend it on things that already have funding sources like the CIP does. I want to see it used on things that we've been putting off for decades, like a community center in the Heights, the finishing the Centennial Park on the West End, being a good partner with the Landon's Legacy folks and getting in phase 2 at Poly Vista. Getting a good start on Colson Park. All these things are not in the CIP because they don't have a funding source right now. So, you know, it's kind of hard to say, yeah, I'd use it to build a road a little faster than we would have normally. I don't like that idea. If we're given money, like we have been with the CARES and the ARPA funds, we should use those things that are going to benefit the community and things that we've been putting off for decades because there's no other way to do them. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, very generous with their 10 million. We appreciate that. I think the first thing that came to mind for me is the Landon's Legacy project at Poly Vista. That would be something I would invest in. Having served on the Parks Board, I'm familiar with what they're trying to do with Landon's Legacy and the Miracle Field, and think that having that park on the West End, especially in Ward 4 here, is going to be huge. So I would certainly throw some of it towards that, and then towards our infrastructure, specifically our roads on the West End that really haven't kept up with the growth out there. And so some of the roads are really dangerous, need to be widened. We need sidewalks out there. So anything that would invest in our infrastructure out there would be something I would support.
$10 million is a lot of money, and yet goes very quickly. I would say that leveraging any kind of matching gifts, you know, where to top things off, that really would allow those projects to then unfold. That would be great. Some of the, definitely some of the infrastructure needs to continue to ensure that those things don't cause greater cost if they, you know, later. And then I think that some of the parks programs, I would agree with the Landon's Legacy that allows folks, that allows families to use that park. It's a multi-use, I mean, the park for folks with disabilities is really important as well, so that they can also take part in the community.
So $10 million isn't a heck of a lot of money, but one of my concerns in our city is I sat down with Chief Valdez from the fire department, and he expressed to me that there are 700 calls more than they were last year, and this was about a month ago when I sat with him, and that was alarming to me. 700 more calls. That's a huge number if you think about that. So and it's not my ward, but I do believe that we need to look at putting in a fire station in the Heights. I think we would use that money for that structure. I also love the Landon's Legacy too. I love the Smith family and what they've done. It's incredible. I know Tom's done a great job with that. But I would like to point that money in that direction in the Heights and make sure that those calls aren't so overwhelming for those young men and women with our fire department.
Thank you for the question. I would invest that $10 million in the South Billings Recreation Aquatic Center. Economic development is a way that we don't bury our taxpayers. Our property taxpayers get the entire bill for so much of our general fund. that in order for us to be able to continue to provide quality services, we need to generate income, good jobs, well-paid jobs so that families have opportunities, people have careers. We have the added benefit of recreation, aquatics. We have a wellness benefit. Those are really important things. South Billings is an area that needs economic development. It needs redevelopment. And that money would go not even a long ways towards the expense. 10 million sounds like a lot, but we have a budget of 400 million. And the identified project in the CIP for South Billings is above 10 million, but that would be very helpful for South Billings. Thank you.
Well, it sounds like the Heights is having a good night. I got a vote for Castle Rock, a vote for Station 8. We're doing pretty good for the Heights tonight. I think it's fundamental if we have a $10 million gift that we would put it to the core functions of government, which has to be public safety. We know from some of the research that the city has done that our police and fire departments are not operating as efficiently as they could because of facility issues. We're going to need to consolidate their operations so that they can operate at maximum facility, and that includes Fire Station 8 in the Heights. We need to ensure that fundamental public safety structure is in place. So that would be my first priority. My second priority would be investing in those safe routes to schools. There's lots of places where our kids are trying to walk to school and it's just not safe for them to do so. And I want to ensure that we stay focused on that core role of government, which is ensuring that people are kept safe. So looking for those areas where it's just not safe for our kids to get to school would be a top priority for me.
I thought about 4 different projects. The first was, so 2.5 to each of them. One would be a fund that really leverages private development in a higher density mixed use development type things, something that just helps push those projects across the board, that because those projects have a tax base that helps support all the other things, including public safety and some other priorities in our community. We also have a reservoir that's being constructed now that is for our West End reservoir, West End treatment plant, and we can have make it into some recreational amenities there. I think also leveraging some private funds there, also at Colson Park and the Marathon Loop, kind of completing some pieces of that. So that's what I would do.
Thank you, candidates. All right, question 3. Back to reality, no more magic money. In 2019, the city established the Energy and Conservation Commission, tasked with, among other things, reducing the amount of money the city spends on energy. Even before the committee was formed, the city was upgrading lighting to LEDs, upgrading the aeration system at the wastewater treatment plant, and even capturing methane at the landfill to convert to natural gas. Each of these innovative projects saves taxpayer dollars. Can you give us one idea you have for finding efficiencies and being thrifty with taxpayer dollars? We're going to start with Ms. Owen and move to the audience's right.
What a great question. I happen to sit on the Energy and Conservation Commission for the city, so this is something that we've worked on hard since the group was founded. Some of you may or may not know that the city has an opportunity right now to have a third-party evaluation of our overall city operations when it comes to energy, and it turns out the city of Billings, as you indicate, actually has done some really incredible things. The one area where I think we're coming up a little short that I would prioritize is on water use. We remember that a lot of us had to skip watering a little bit this summer. We know we have some water shortages, and it turns out that in a lot of our parks, we're still doing manual irrigation. Someone's actually driving to a park and setting sprinklers in the ground. So the way that the city uses water, the way that we produce and treat water, the way that it uses it for its own internal purposes, I think is an area of significant both cost and operational savings.
Thank you. Councilwoman Joy.
Thank you for the question. I think one of the ways we could really do some efficiencies is we're looking right now to whether or not we want to purchase a facility for our city hall. One of the inefficiencies we are experiencing right now is that our departments are spread out among a series of different buildings. We have an opportunity right now to put those departments all together. I think we can rebuild or put in place in that building things that will really take an opportunity for us to have an efficient and energy efficient and efficient space for our city employees. City employees right now are working in closets. They're working in spaces that were meant to be vaults. Those aren't efficiencies when you have people working without windows or fresh air or those kinds of amenities in their office space. Thank you.
So probably not the last time I'm going to do this tonight, but I'm going to piggyback what Jennifer had to say. If you drive around town, you see these poor guys out there, and they're putting in all of these sprinklers, and they're jacking them down, and then next thing they have to leave, and then they have to run back and turn them off and take them all away, and there's water all over the place. That's a very old and antiquated way to take care of our parks. We are wasting tons of energy, tons of manpower, and tons of water doing this. So in all reality, you have to be able to spend your money efficiently. So I do believe we need to look at taking those parks in those areas, and we need to put in the proper irrigation systems so that we are going to save money. The only reason to spend money as a businessman is if you're going to save money or make money, right? That totally makes sense. It's common sense. So if we're going to save money and save labor, it just makes total sense to go and spend the money, put in the irrigation, and use the water more efficiently.
Water to me is really important because it's a basic of life. And I know that water is something that I've worked with on various issues, not just locally, but around the state and in the region. So I would, in the interest of time, so I don't get yanked off again, I would say I would certainly invest in that.
Yeah, I'll keep beating that drum. Water is important. I think with our current climate crisis, and this summer we saw the impacts of what we're currently living through. And so, I've heard the comments about the parks, but the Parks Department has been working for the last several years to upgrade their parks. It's been slow to get support from council to do multiple projects at once. So they're doing it, one park at a time, maybe every couple of years. So I think North Park was the most recent one that was updated. And it's important because they're aware also of how inefficient it is. In my last 20 seconds, I would just note as well that time can be inefficiently used. And I think that sometimes our current council, previous councils haven't respected the time that our city boards, our folks like the folks at the chamber, the work that they do isn't respected as much as it could be sometimes. And so I would support that work so that our city staff doesn't have to work so hard to find these answers and develop all this stuff that's already been developed by our city boards. So I would include time management as well.
Well, thanks, John. I couldn't tell if you wanted us to just be thrifty with energy and water or any thrifty at all. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was the Center for Public Safety Management study just came out looking at our police and fire services. And there are a lot of opportunities to help our police department be more efficient. One of the ones that I'm really fond of and looking forward to getting implemented are something called community service officers, where these are non-uniformed officers that will take some of the burden off our uniformed officers so they can spend more time engaged in communities and dealing with higher level activities. So, something like that where we can use essentially lower cost resources, people making less salary and requiring less technical assistance, can take the burden off of our police officers, making them more efficient, and it's a win-win for the city, both substantively as well as fiscally.
Thank you. More specifically, as Mr. Ripsis says, the public safety is, police and fire departments' budgets are underfunded, and currently the funds from the city budget are being used to balance these department budgets. It's imperative that the Billings City Council make every effort to educate our citizens concerning the importance of passing another safety mill levy in order to ensure the adequate financing of these two departments. But going back, what we could use, of hiring more police, let's just go with police that has, on them a step, and they would just give tickets out every day, and that would be all their duty to do. Once again, the budgets are underfunded, and we could probably get our police, separated as one policeman just writing tickets and others on other duties. Thank you.
So the guys who put the sprinkler heads in the ground, that was me a lot of years ago, many moons ago. So water efficiency is near and dear to my heart as well. Actually, my thought, though, is an incentive program for mostly private sector water efficiency. Right now, our city water treatment plant treats 3 times as much water in the summertime as it does in the winter. So that's largely irrigation. And I think there are opportunities for dramatically reducing our water use through very attractive landscaping methods, but it takes some money to do that. And so having an incentive that does that also is giving money back to all the utility ratepayers. The other thing I do, of course, in my 7 seconds left, is high-performance green buildings that are net zero, that also are not spending utility dollars to keep them maintained.
Thank you, candidates. Question number 4. Billings City Council adopted the One Big Sky District Plan in 2018. The anchor developments identified in the plan included downtown residential, convention facilities, new facilities at MSU Billings, and a new city hall. Without passing the legislative funding mechanism that incentivizes private dollars to lead these projects, the strategy partners, which includes the City of Billings, will need to take smaller, more incremental steps on these developments. With that in mind, which anchor development do you think council should help work towards, and why do you think it should take priority? We're going to start with Mr. Ripsis and move to the audience's left.
If I just sit here, will they not start the clock? I think probably the centerpiece of that project was the convention center, and that was what was going to be the whole economic driver for the region. I think you'd probably have to start there. I'm not sure that the plan was fully fleshed out yet in terms of what that would contain, or if it was, sized appropriately, how it was going to be designed. I think it was way too early in the process to figure that out. So I think we'd have to take a different kind of approach into figuring out what we would actually like to see, where it should be located, and how we see that as being a driver for the city. Without all the other private investment that might come along with it, it could end up just as an island, a big structure in the middle of a city that has no supporting infrastructure around it, and we certainly don't want that. So I think we'd have to take another approach to how it was being thought out, but I'd probably have to start with the convention center.
Thank you.
Well, somebody who's worked in healthcare for a really long time, the thing that really stuck out to me was the medical corridor ideas and what they wanted to do with that. I think upgrading that whole section and working with, as a council member, working with the hospital partners as well as our public health department, it's going to be important for the future because we're obviously heavily driven here by our medical community, and they're a large employer here, if not they're the largest, so that corridor is very important. So I would like to see that area developed with an idea of what is this going to look like in the future as well. So we're going to have some biomedicine, some additional research opportunities in that area. I think is going to be important for this community moving forward for the next 10 or 20 years.
I believe it would be the convention center because it not only would serve Billings but also the state because we need convention facilities. And certainly I would like for Billings to be the leader in providing that convention space and so that we can optimize all the income that would come in from out-of-town guests and so forth. And then I think that that's where I would use my $10 million. John? Okay.
So one of the things I am is I'm the president of the Metropark Advisory Board. And right now we're in the middle of working very, very hard on the Metropark vision. So this is kind of my wheelhouse, as John knows, and we've presented to John and talked to him about this. And one of the things that we've learned is the convention center is a fabulous thing, but it's actually a loss leader. What it does do, though, as we all know, is it puts heads in beds. It fills up our hotels. It fills up our restaurants. People are at Shields buying shoes. They're putting gas in their vehicle. They're eating, down at Jake's. So that's what I think we should do. But I do think it's like an elephant. You got to take, small bites, but eventually you got to finish the whole thing. So I would absolutely encourage that. As we've done our studies out at the Metropark, that is something that we don't have enough of in Billings, and it does bring people. And those people end up spending about $225 a day per person that stays for 24 hours. It's a fantastic idea, and I'm all for a convention center because it will feed the entire city as an economic engine. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think I choose housing. Housing actually is it's an identified need of the downtown area. It isn't part of our assessment. It is an identified need within the eBird. And the thing about housing is it has a very good effect on public safety. When you have people living in your downtown area, some of them may be people who work in medicine who are out at different times of the day. There's recently been a redevelopment in the old St. Francis School that has been developed into housing. Housing and CEPTEB, the principles of having good public safety in an urban area, housing is really fundamental to any downtown area. It would have an improvement on our public safety. It would have an improvement in terms of our retail and what's available for private business opportunities in our downtown area. Even the small Lillis market is doing quite well. So I think it would have a very good impact. Thank you.
When it comes to downtown redevelopment, I think the city's role should first and foremost be to do its job. It needs to keep downtown safe so that private investment can come into the downtown and make those wise economic decisions. I think City Council needs to focus on having a cost-effective, efficient facility where citizens can do business and get things done. We need to ensure that our policies and procedures aren't inhibiting private development. Do we have an efficient and effective permitting process? Do we have adequate zoning? Are our codes and standards reasonable so that people can make investment? Let's make sure that council first does its core jobs of keeping the citizenry safe and ensuring that government is running effectively so that private sector investments can flow to where they are most effective.
I think the most risk-free project would be housing. Our architecture firm has done a lot of work downtown, and those projects have we have long waiting lists for them. There's definitely already a market for that, and those projects really drive a lot of other development downtown. So I think that's if you just had to focus on one first thing, because the whole plan before was you need to have a certain critical mass of all of these to really make the thing work. But there's certainly merits to a convention center. I concerned that convention center without these other developments just doesn't have quite enough of the critical mass needed. And Councilmember Joy is absolutely right. Housing downtown provides more eyes in the street. These are things that help reduce crime and just really creates a vibrant downtown.
Thank you. Mr. Elvistad.
Thank you. This is a really interesting. City government should always be cognizant of any development taking place within its boundaries, especially downtown and the city. Currently, the city does exist with some economic development. For example, the creation of TIF districts, tax districts, which assist in stimulating development within the Pacific areas. However, the council must remain extremely prudent and cautious in regard to the use of the taxpayer dollars, which is yours, with private investment. There may be times when the input of the public monies might make sense. There may be times, but also these developments must be also meticulously vetted. So you have to make sure on your TIF districts. I would love to have a TIF district in my area where that money comes right back to my district. And that's what I would do for TIFs, because TIFs are very, very important. It gets rid of the pollution, TIF pollution, and it works in many places. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. We'll move on to question number 5. Just one more question before the much anticipated second lightning round. The state legislature passed a law in the 2021 session which will require Billings voters to reauthorize Park District 1, a controversial funding mechanism. What should City Council's strategy be to fund our city parks and trails, an essential amenity for talent attraction in the next several years? We're going to start with Councilwoman Joy and move to the audience's right.
Thank you. Yes, this is a very difficult issue to take on right now. I supported council moving forward with establishing a partnership with the Land Trust. The Land Trust has done excellent work for the city of Bozeman and all around Montana and across the country in helping to leverage private money and public money. The most sensible thing to do is to have a dedicated mill levy. Mill levies don't come back up for reapproval from the voters. They're consistent. They're an amount of money that does grow slowly, but it does grow as our tax base grows. So probably the most sensible thing to do is to amend our charter, not to amend our charter, but to allow a dedicated parks mill levy. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Loveridge.
Thank you. So I've done a little bit of research on this park one. It's very complicated. I was surprised as I spoke to different people about it, but one of the things I like about it a lot is, I'm not sure about you folks, but I don't like to be taxed and not know what I'm being taxed on. And I like an opportunity to know what I'm going to be taxed for. I know we raise fees all over the place and we just vote for it, and actually I heard a gal say during a meeting, well, don't worry about it, we'll just pass that along to the consumer. And I almost threw a shoe. I was pretty upset. I don't like that very much. So where I'm going with this is, I like the park one. I like the fact that us as citizens get to vote on that every 12 years and get to look at it and say, okay, yes, we do want to have more money go to our parks. Now, I'm for that, us having an idea of what we're going to vote on. Now, there's an upside to that too. There may be more money that goes to the parks, not less. So I'm actually okay with that going forward as being an opportunity for us as taxpayers to make that decision. Thank you.
So I believe that this is an opportunity to leverage the work of nonprofits and public entities such as the City Council or the City of Billings, and to take advantage of what the different sectors have in order to, and also work then with the private sector to fund, to share the love, so to speak. I think mill levies are getting, as I speak to voters, they are feeling stressed. So I do feel that we need to really leverage the partnerships of nonprofits and private entities and really figure out a plan along with our partners in the private sector.
Well, I share the opinion of several nonprofits who don't believe it's their responsibility to build the infrastructure of the city. I don't believe that should be the nonprofit's role either. It's the city's role to build the infrastructure. We look for nonprofits to come in and help with some amenities, playgrounds, et cetera. But the city really should be fundamentally responsible for installing the infrastructure of the city. Park District 1, I'm a champion of it. I feel like it's really unfortunate that misinformation won the day with our state legislators, and they took that, you know, they really are looking to take that tool away. Essentially, it's another assessment that the council gets to set every year at whatever they want. And so, you know, if they were to set it at $10 million, there would be outrage unless they had an absolute plan for where that money would go. And so council has all kinds of assessments that they raise every year without a vote of the people. It's not shady, it's not, you know, bad government. It's just, that's the responsibility of elected officials. And so it's my hope that Park District 1 remains and that council can keep using it as a tool. And we'll see.
Well, as the chair of the Parks Board, this is something that we've been intimately familiar with over the last few years. In fact, we presented a council for funding options for our parks, operations, maintenance, as well as development of all our undeveloped and underdeveloped parks around the city earlier this year. PD1 right now accounts for about a third of our parks funding. There is no second way about this. If we do not replace PD1 either with another special district that, as Charlie mentioned, would have to be renewed again, you know, continually every 13 years, or with a mill levy, as Denise mentioned, that doesn't have to be renewed. That operations and maintenance budget is critical. I mean, look at the outrage that happened last year when the Parks Department was asked to cut $1 million from the budget. And we were closing pools and we were not picking up trash more than once a week, and there were horrible impacts of that. There's no two ways about it. Council will have to put something on the ballot, either another park district or a mill levy for parks operations and maintenance over the next couple years.
Thank you. As we know, Billings is singularly fortunate to enjoy a diverse system of beautiful parks and a myriad of walking trails here and bike trails throughout our wonderful city. We have lots of trails, and recently Billings TrailNet and our Public Works Department suggested that $2 a month would be accessed on all city utility bills, all your utility bills, in order to help fund our parks and trail system. Of course, it would be a voluntary assessment similar to the state's parking. As you go to your parks, they ask you if you want to donate to a certain organization. I would certainly support such an assessment and work hard towards its realization, because that would work, and it costs us less for our parks, and we could use that on all our utility bills and everyone get the enjoyment. And I would work hard, if elected on council, towards that realization. Thank you.
So this is something I'd be interested in finding out a little bit more about, but actually taking parks entirely out of the general fund, just so that there's more predictability to it. Obviously have to correspondingly reduce the general fund for money that had been delegated for parks. And I think we need to do two things. We need to bring before the voters. One is a mill levy, and then there is a bond levy. So the mill levy is for just operational support for the parks. A bond levy would have specific projects to be done in a specific time frame. It has to be very transparent. This is what we're going to do and when we're going to complete it. And the bond levy would have to be null and void if the mill levy doesn't pass as well. So some of my thoughts on parks.
Thank you. All right, candidates.
Can I take a run at that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Please, my apologies.
I guess I would be Ed's polar opposite. I think budgets are about making tough decisions, and I think that we need to have our fundamental priorities weighed every year by competent council members who are making decisions based on the needs of the community. Those are things that change on an annual basis, and that's why we have a budget process, so that we can decide what needs to be funded this year and what waits another year based on the trends and dynamics of the community. We know there are efficient and effective ways to grow our parks. Many of us have enjoyed the incredible work being done right now by the Yellowstone River Parks Association in the Heights. Dover Park is one of our most beautiful assets, developed privately. We know that there's incredible work that can be done with partnerships to more efficiently and effectively develop our park system. And I think council can do a lot more to focus on some of those capital investments that have at least some revenue generation potential to offset operational costs. Things that allow us to do more recreational programming, have rooms for rent, have pavilions for rent so that people can hold events. I mean, we have ways to think about our system more efficiently, and I think that's what the annual budget process is for.
Thank you. Sorry. All right. We're going to go to our second lightning round, and I'll ask the candidates to grab their owls again. And we'll go through a series of 6 questions here for your quick response. Number 1, have you ever done a ride-along with our police department, walked the beat with our downtown officers, or toured the county jail to get a better idea about our public safety situation? Okay, thank you. Do you support the 2021 public safety mill levy? Answers? Good? Okay. All right. Thank you. Third question. Would you endorse and work with our local legislators on a local option authority bill similar to those introduced in previous legislative sessions, which include a citizens' vote, a capped tax rate, property tax relief, and is targeted to tax tourists? Thank you. Next, do you support a welcome diversity ordinance or non-discrimination ordinance similar to those proposed in recent years? Okay. All right, thank you. Next, a member of City Council has proposed shifting a portion of the $2 per night tourism business improvement district assessment collected by our hotels away from tourism promotion to fund public safety. Would you support this shift? All right. And the last one, continuing with our Halloween theme here, we heard some stories earlier, and I think I verified some of these right before we started and heard some noises in the back here. Do you believe the rumors that there is a ghost who roams the Alberta Bair Theater? Sure? Yeah. You don't know what's behind you guys. All right. Okay, thank you. We're going to go on to number 6, and just a reminder to keep your responses to 1 minute. Number 6, tax increment finance, or TIF, is one of the few economic development tools we have to incentivize private investment. TIF monies have been used to return downtown streets to two-way traffic. TIF was utilized to renovate the incredible space we're in tonight, the Alberta Bair Theater. And we pair up TIF money with private businesses to help SEPTED security improvements to their properties. In your view, what is an appropriate use of TIF funding for economic development? We're going to start with Mr. Warburton and move to the audience's left.
Well, I think the appropriate use is what's been defined in the criteria that the TIF districts use to present in front of council. And so I'm a promoter or supporter of TIF districts. And watching some of these past ones, there were folks who said they were supporters of TIF districts that are on council that don't seem very supportive of it. And so I wonder if they actually know what TIF districts are or what they do. But I'm supportive of it. I've seen and heard the benefits throughout the city, and think that more areas of the city should look at, how do we get something similar in place so that we can really revitalize this specific area of the town. And so I'm supportive of them, and think that the criteria is already well laid out, and I wouldn't change anything with it.
Yes, Ms. Hernandez.
I'm sorry, John, could you repeat the question?
Sure. In your view, What is an appropriate use of TIF funding for economic development?
Well, it definitely helps our city, you know, in development, and I fully support that. And I'd love to be able to explore how, this is where I still have my homework to do, you know, but I think that we really need to look at those things that will help to help our employers as well as our citizens, and that would be such things as multi-unit housing and so forth, and which would be beneficial to the developers as well as provide some affordable housing and the like.
So another thing about me is I've coached 12 years of high school basketball as well as numerous other sports over the years. I haven't stopped coaching, it seems like, since I was 18 years old. I'm really excited about what they're using the TIF money for down on the south side. One, to revitalize part of Ward 3, as we both know that's important. Building that athletics facility, I think, is an absolute must for our community. One of the things is it's also going to be able to generate its own revenue through rentals and whatnot down there. I think that's a great usage of those monies, and I do support those monies. But the key is we have to make sure that we prioritize properly. We have to use those monies in the right places. We can't use those monies in things that aren't important, that don't want, I think, raise revenues and pay for themselves. I think that's wildly important. Now, they don't all do that, and it does help revitalize an area, so that's also something to be considered. But we need to make sure that we prioritize those monies properly to where it's most needed in our community.
Thank you for the question. State law tells us that what we can and cannot use our TIF money for, that is driven by state law. So it says very clearly it should be led by private investment. Private investment is the primary area of TIF money. However, it does not preclude the use for nonprofits. And nonprofits in Billings, Montana do a tremendous amount of good. They generate their own dollars into our economy. They provide decent jobs. They do a lot of things that the city does not do, and they're in that purview of nonprofit. I think that the best way to approach a TIF application is to look at it on the basis of merits. What is it that you choose to accomplish with this TIF application? How does it suit the community, and what is the return on its investment? Thank you.
The purpose of tax increment financing is to revitalize blighted areas, and that should be its focus and its priority. I think we can look at the eBird to see the incredible work that's been done when you focus on beautifying areas and creating the circumstances for private investment to flourish. So those sorts of things that clean up blight, that make areas more attractive for investment, for private investment, that can look like, gosh, sidewalks or lighting or fencing or cleaning up dirty areas so that they can be brownfield investments. I mean, there's really good work that we can do with TIFs when we focus on driving that economic growth and economic revitalization.
I definitely support the mechanism of TIF funding. My firm has done a lot of projects that benefited from those. That was essential. Those projects wouldn't have happened without it. But they brought in a lot it really leveraged the private investment. And so I think leveraging private investment is the biggest piece, the most appropriate use for TIF dollars. So, you know, basically for every dollar of TIF money, you're looking for $6 of private investment or other investment in those projects. And so housing development, those kinds of things I think are really important. And those are the kinds of things that increase our tax base far more than, much more than the taxes that are used for the TIF program. So that's where I'd use them.
Thank you.
As I mentioned before about the creation of the TIF funds, however, it is very important that the council remain prudent and cautious in regard to the use of the taxpayer dollars mixing with private investment, because there are many times I want to reiterate the input of public money might make sense. It might make sense, but these developments must be meticulously vetted. Like I said before, you have to be extremely prudent, very caution to the use of your tax dollars, because there will be abuse, and it's very, very important that the importance of your money makes sense, that these developments must be vetted, they must be watched. Thank you.
Well, as Denise mentioned, it's fairly straightforward what we can use TIF funds for appropriately, and that's to reduce or prevent blight. I'm for a fairly expansive understanding of what that means in our communities. It's hard to say that the Suburra Rec Center is really removing or preventing blight, but I'm for that. Right? It's you know, the things that Jennifer mentioned going on in the eBird, those are all great things, and we need to support those because they in turn support private dollars coming into the area. One of the areas where I think we're struggling nowadays is in affordable housing, and I'd be all for using more TIF, targeted TIF funds to encourage developers to build mixed housing that provides a range of housing at different levels of affordability. You know, specifically in our TIF districts. I think that's something that we could define those policies ahead of time and maybe put in some special allowances if developers are going after housing projects.
Thank you. Question number 7. To help govern, council members frequently encourage citizens to engage in council meetings. But it can be a struggle to get people to commit to attending council meetings that can last deep into the evening. Do you have any ideas to ensuring meetings are timelier and/or how to best promote public participation? We're going to start with Mr. Loveridge and move to the audience's right.
I'm not going to beat up on you, Mayor. I promise you that. Hey, so I watch the city council meetings, and one of the things I would love to see happen as we go forward, I would like to see a little bit better scheduling. So, for example, if there's something that comes up and I want to come talk about it, for example, my wife and I watched it the other night in the comfort of our home, and my very understanding wife, by the way, and we're watching it, and there's this one poor lady sitting in the back for 4.5 hours, just sitting there waiting, and she spoke second to last. She sat there the whole time. So what I would like to see happen, kind of like basketball practice, so 5 o'clock to 5:17, we do this. From 5:17 to 5:25, we do this. Now, I know it sounds a little difficult to do, but I do believe if we stick to that, we can get in and out of there in less than 5 hours, I believe. That's what and I think that would encourage people to come. They're like, oh, yeah, we're going to talk about this at 6:30, so I'll be there at 6:30 so they can get on with their night. They don't have to spend 5 hours in there. So that's what I think we should do to allow people to come and enjoy those meetings and have their voice be heard.
Thank you. Ms. Hernandez.
I believe that we can utilize the approved position of the Public Information Officer to also help explain to us as citizens what the issues are and some of those points along the way, so that that also may help to reduce some of the time necessary to reiterate those things if it's something that can be posted and shared and in real time with all of us. And then also, again, I think that an agenda is really, a tight agenda is really helpful. You know, we can always extend time and table things and the like, but certainly it would help folks know that they can rely on certainly having their thoughts heard.
Well, as somebody who's been attending meetings since probably 2015, I can say sitting there for hours to get your 3 minutes in at the end is a challenge, but it's worth it if you're talking about the right thing. I would say, to address the question though, what comes to mind for me is preparedness on the part of your council members. You can tell who's prepared and who isn't, and it makes a big difference when we have people show up on Monday night sitting in those seats that are looking at this information seemingly for the first time and asking questions that informed public members that have read the memo from the staff have put together. That information's there. We just don't have council members that read it all the time. And so I think council members that are better prepared and put in the work would be important. And I think listening more as a council member, maybe reducing the, let me give you my principled stand on every single issue that comes before us. It's really not necessary. And so those are a couple things I would suggest.
I have 3 ideas for this. The first is we could consider putting public comment on any agenda item or non-agenda item at the beginning of the agenda so that people don't have to sit around all night waiting for whenever that happens to come up. I think we could also consider limiting council member questions to 3 to 5 minutes during business meetings, not during work sessions. Those are when we kind of really dive into topics, but during business meetings, it should be about just checking the boxes and getting it through. So limit those questions, limit council members to 3 to 5 minutes of continuous questions, and then on to anybody else who wants to come, not going back to the same person over and over again. And then finally, I think we should limit questions and commentary on the consent agenda items that are not separated. If you haven't separated an item, it's really not that controversial. Just get it done and move on.
Thank you. I've been to many city council meetings, and some of them are pretty long. And as a council member, you should know all the issues. I'd like to tell you about a little experience on Ward 5. I had a house that burned down, and the next door neighbors called me up, and I was a West End Task Force chair. And they didn't know what to do. So I says, what you've got to do, you have to go to city council, show them pictures and everything of what happened. So I informed them I will go with them down there to city council. So they showed pictures of the house and everything. They said, what is going on? What happened? The owner had moved away, and he lived in a different state, and the taxes were not paid on that house in 10 years. Today, that house is very, very nice. We got involved. I got the citizens involved, and they really liked that, and they were glad that someone came in and showed them what council does and does not do. Once again, I think it's very important that we should educate the public on what the council can and cannot do, and talking about issues shouldn't be just a one issue a person. You should be educated on all your issues, what is going on
Mr.
in
Elvistad, that
city
is time.
council, especially the charter, and educate the constituents on their charter.
Thank you.
I think it's really incumbent upon the council members to be really well prepared. We've done a lot of work to get to this place, but we're here to represent the interests of the citizens of Billings. And fundamentally, city council meetings are for hearing the issue, getting input from the public, and making a decision. And I think I see a lot of times just people afraid to make a decision, I guess. And so I think it's really incumbent upon council members to be well prepared in advance. I'd like to see, be really well prepared.
I would agree with much of what's been said tonight. For those of us junkies who watch council meetings on Monday nights, we will see consent agenda debates that last for an hour. That's clearly not consent. There's no reason for that. We need to have council members who come prepared so that they're flagging issues ahead of time. If they need to be debated or need to be rescheduled, that we do that. We need to have council members who have done the work to educate themselves. I often see questions, even during business meetings, about the basic mechanics of how a particular program works. That's not a good use of the public's time. There are other ways to solve that. But most fundamentally, we need council members who actually want routine, robust public participation. And that's going to mean a lot of voter outreach. That's going to mean talking to people who are affected by the decisions that are made proactively, so that not everything has to be funneled through a council meeting, but that we're having much more proactively attended public meetings, that we are reaching out, engaging stakeholders, engaging citizens affected by decisions proactively so that they have a voice well in advance of business meetings.
Thank you for the question. I know personally how long they can be, so. And don't worry, Mr. Mayor, I'm not going to say anything critical. Our public information officer could be helpful. Another suggestion is that someone came forward who is a person from Rocky Mountain College and suggested maybe we could have an intern that would go through our agenda for Channel 7 and actually put out some bullet points. So maybe there are ways in which we can take, because watching the entire meeting isn't really possible for a lot of people. If there are ways that we can condense or summarize some of the big issues that were discussed that would give people a clearer idea of what it was that we were discussing, that's another. And when we have something important like rewriting our zoning codes, City Council members need to be there for hours in order to hear those regulations and to understand them. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, this is the final question. Respectfully, what differentiates you from your opponent, and why should voters choose you? We're going to start with Ms. Hernandez and move to the audience's left.
And I have two opponents, and what differentiates me, that's obvious, is that I'm female, I'm Mexican or Latina, and I'm on the tail end of the boomer generation. In addition to that, I feel that what really differentiates me is that I have years of experience as a proven, experienced, and courageous leader. I have jumped into some really hard issues and have worked on those issues throughout my years, starting in junior high school. And a lot of that has to do with policy, legislation and so forth. I also have, I'm not afraid to jump into those and fail so that we can find a better way, a better plan. I'm a known problem solver. I'm called in when things are challenging. And I would say that my superpower is that I'm compassionate and I'm strategic.
Thank you. Mr. Loveridge.
Can we use sex as a difference? Because I'm a male. So, the differences are fairly obvious. I've been a leader my entire life. From day one, I've been a leader in sports. I've been a leader in business. I sign the front of paychecks. And I'll tell you something, when you start doing that, you start having to figure out how to take and make priorities happen. When you have a $400 million HOA, our budget, you have to make tough decisions. And tough decisions are important when you have to deal with money, especially when we're the stewards of the money out there. We are on different sides of the aisle, in fact, far different sides, and I understand that. However, the leadership that I can bring to the table, the common sense private sector with Montana values, separates me completely from my opponent. And for that, I'm looking forward to serving my community.
I have the experience and courage to vote for Ward 3 concerns. I have supported, discussed, and campaigned for greater investment in public safety for 3.5 years. I have lived the blue. The concerns of public safety were the air I breathed growing up, the uniform, the service firearm, the concern for my father's safety. It is what I have lived and know. I have proved my commitment to better public safety for Ward 3 and this city. I have voted for increased public safety investments on council. I support my union brothers and sisters. Economic development has been a passion for years on council. I studied the economic redevelopment of Allentown, PA on an aspirational study tour. I have voted to support the investment in the Suburra, downtown, TIFF, and eBird. These investments in redevelopment are central to the growth of opportunities for young families and the aspiration of young families for a living wage career. I voted for cooperating with Yellowstone County for using our water sewer treatment system for the TED.
Councilwoman, that is time.
I have proved my leadership and continue to step up and speak out for Ward 3 safety and investments. Please support my re-election campaign. Thank you.
Thank you.
As I've been out campaigning and talking to voters in my Heights district, what I continually hear is there are really incredible things happening in our community, but there's real frustration with the direction of City Council. We need new, fresh faces and new ideas. Tonight, with all due respect to our wonderful hosts, we had a City Council forum in which no candidate was given an opportunity to talk about the public safety mill levy. This is a challenge for our community. People like things in the safety mill and they have real concerns. We need council members and leaders who can work to resolve those even now before Election Day. I may not like the welcoming diversity ordinances of the past, but I know that if we come together as a community, people on all sides of the issue, we can craft a solution that protects the civil liberties of all residents, a solution that resonates with all of us. And that's the difference. I'm solution-oriented. I'm willing to dive in and listen to those diverse perspectives and find that solution that fits us as a community. We have a bright future ahead, but we need that clear vision and leadership, and that's what I hope to bring to City Council.
While there are a number of issues that Stephanie Krieger and I agree on, I believe that I bring a greater depth of understanding of most of those issues, more ideas on how to solve them, and the passion to address them. But we also have some fundamental differences. In times of crisis in our community, we need leadership that recognizes a threat, brings the community together, and is focused on real solutions. During our current pandemic, we've only been partially successful in controlling the spread of disease locally because people are getting neither vaccinated nor masked. So dozens of people are fighting for their lives right now in our hospitals, and they're over 150% capacity. Our nurses and doctors are overworked. We are clearly in a community crisis. Stephanie has been an opposition leader to the mask mandate in our schools without considering the consequences of hundreds or thousands of children getting COVID and bringing that home to their families. We need leadership that doesn't bring misinformation or foment division in our community. We need leadership that brings us together to pursue real solutions.
Mr. Elvistad.
Thank you. We have forgot somebody here, our two colleges. And a response for our two colleges, they vote too. So I'd like a response here. So especially Rocky and Easton and MSUB now. I've always felt that the city of Billings and the two colleges situated here have enjoyed a mutually beneficial, symbiotic relationship with one another over the years. As a large metropolitan area, Billings provides numerous opportunities for college students to network and learn within the various industries located here. We enjoy large businesses, financial and medical industries here, as well as the largest K-12 school district in our state. Our medical community is a prime example. We have the best between, of course, Washington and back east. Our medical community is a prime example, offering many students an opportunity to train each year for future employment within that industry, which is the medical industry. The city of Billings has a responsibility to provide essential services to the two schools here. We are responsible for providing adequate police and fire protection, parks and utilities adjacent to these schools. I feel it's an obligation of our city government to ensure these services are always, always properly maintained. Thank you.
I mentioned earlier that my professional experience is in project management and business analysis. I spend a lot of time learning my client's business and their processes, and then defining and managing software that fits their needs. My clients value my ability to quickly understand their issues, to speak their language, to identify potentially unintended consequences, and to explain highly technical issues in an understandable way. These are skills that directly relate to being a council member. I've got a lot to learn, and I'm approaching this election with a great deal of humility, but I honestly believe I'm the only candidate from Ward 5 that's prepared to deal with the complex challenges and the exciting opportunities ahead. I want to thank you all for coming out here tonight. It's important to have engaged and interested citizens. I appreciate you taking the time, and I also want to thank the Chamber and the DBA for putting on this event and giving us this opportunity to perform on this great stage. So.
Thanks. Yeah, this is the first time we've really had a chance to kind of address this question head on, and I think it's important for you guys. You guys are essentially hiring us to do a job for you, right? And so I think all of us on the stage have good resumes and good experience, but my question is, who's been there? Who's been putting in the work the last several years to know actually on day one, when they're sworn in, what's going on with the city? Who's not going to have to understand what a TIF district is? Who's not going to be finding out for the first time that there's a West End task force? What's that? We actually have council members now that are learning about task force for the first time 18 months into their term. And quite honestly, it's unacceptable that they're so uninformed of what's going on in our community. And so I think everybody's probably equally as capable as trying to understand it, but who's been actually there, who's been putting in the time, and is going to do the best job for you guys to represent you and make sure that we're advocating appropriately for what you guys need while also understanding the issues. So I would appreciate your support. I think this is a great opportunity for the baby boomer generation to invest in some younger generations, some new leadership here in the city, to bring in some new ideas and keep Billings moving forward. Thank you.
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That does conclude tonight's event. And I hope you agree, we've got a wonderful crop of candidates this year. And I would encourage you all to reach out to those candidates running in your ward, get to know them a little bit better, ask the questions that you want answered. And I hope that you'll join me now in thanking all of them for their time this evening. As a reminder, ballots are going to be mailed October 13th. Please watch your mailboxes for this year's all-mail ballot, and please vote. Additionally, the much-needed public safety mill levy will be on the same ballot. Please vote yes to support our first responders and the other tools to lower crime rates. I want to thank you all for coming and have a great evening.